Hello, my name is Chris and I'm a U-Haul hitch professional. If you're planning on towing a trailer with your Land Rover Discovery Sport, then you're going to need trailer wiring. It is required by the law. Now let's take a look at how we complete this install. You will need the following tools or supplies to complete this installation. Begin this installation with the cargo door up so we can access the bolt that holds back our tail light. On the driver's side, you will find a large trim cutout, and you can loosen the clip with a 90-degree turn using a flathead screwdriver. Now move the trim knockout out of the way, exposing the tail light bolt that is spring-loaded right here. Use a flathead screwdriver to loosen it. You can now gently pull the tail light rearward. Now remove the tail light adapter by gently depressing on the tab and pulling it loose. You can now remove the passenger side tail light. On the passenger side, you will just find a small plastic insert. It can be popped out. Before we begin installing all the wiring harness in the back here, I'm going to go ahead and jump to the engine compartment and install our U-Haul exclusive Power Wire 1. It is OEM quality, pre-braided with abrasion resistance, so we're going to want to utilize that by working our way from the engine backwards. Expose your vehicle's battery by exposing the trim clips holding the cover in place. Rotate them until the center pops out of the bottom and can be removed by hand. With the battery exposed, we can now draw power by removing this nut here. You can remove this nut using a 13mm socket. You can now place the ring terminal of your fuse holder over the post. I would suggest going under this bracket and re-secure with the nut. Tighten snugly, but do not over tighten. That lead is technically now hot, so let's cover it with the cover and move forward. Now use a fishing device to pass down the firewall and retrieve this from under the vehicle and bring it back up. Use a fishing pole or an extra length of wire and try to follow the hard brake lines which can be found behind the battery. Look for your brake master cylinder where you put your .3 brake fluid. This area is going to be harder to access, but you can get to it from right under here. You can now pass your pole or wiring between some vacuum lines and hoses directly below the brake master cylinder. Pull your fishing pole loose. Pass the wire behind the hard metal brake line right here below the firewall to use as an anchor point after you pull it up. Now tape the fuse holder end to your pole and pull it back up. Now I'm going to pass the wire under our bracket in order to get it into the battery box. Gently pull back on the trim. Give yourself enough room to pull it through. Now insert your fused end into the fused holder. We can now use provided zip ties to secure our wiring, pulling all the slack to the rear of the vehicle. Continue to route the power wire rearward, following the hard metal brake lines along the vehicle's frame, using zip ties to secure it along the way. You can now use a 10mm socket to loosen two fasteners so you can gain access to the brake lines hiding behind the underbody panel. You can now return the fasteners on the underbody panel before you continue routing the power wire rearward. At the rear of the vehicle, be sure you go over any cross-member supports, frame supports, and make sure you do not tangle with the rear drive components. You can now finish routing the power wire behind the driver's side tire. We will need to get into this underbody panel. So let's go ahead and remove a couple 10mm fasteners. You can now remove 3 fasteners from your wheel well. At the bottom, there is a Phillips head and a T25 Torx bit. And slightly higher up, you will find another Phillips head bit. We're now going to remove the corner of the bumper fascia to gain access with the wiring harness. There are several fasteners to remove, beginning up here with a Phillips head screwdriver and a 10mm bolt. We can now gently peel back our wheel trim. That exposes one hidden 10mm fastener that we can remove. Apply some blue masking tape to prevent any scratches while we're lifting this fascia off and before we return it. Reach inside with one hand to help with leverage and gently peel the fascia away to gain access with our wiring. This will now expose two more Phillips head screws, one here and one here, so we can loosen this plastic that houses the tail light to pass the wire behind it. We can now separate these two plastic brackets, and this will allow us to get the T-connector into the tail light cavity. Now pass the wires behind the fascia, behind the bracket. Now mate the harness and the vehicle connector so we don't lose this. We're now going to affix the white wire, the ground wire, to a bare metal surface here in the tail light cavity. We want to try to keep it below the body lines to make sure the tail light doesn't touch it. As well, there's some plastic back here. You'll find two folding body lines converging. That's where we want to go. We're now going to hide our converter box using the double-sided sticky tape. There's a convenient shelf right here behind the fascia. Be sure to clean the area to make sure it is free of dirt and debris. We can now connect our power wire. I'm going to use a heat shrink butt connector that is not included with the kit because I'm on the exterior of the vehicle. Trim off any excess. Use a heat source to melt the plastic. Now, in order to get access across the bumper fascia, we're going to go ahead and remove this trim panel. Use a 10mm socket to remove two fasteners. You can now remove the trim. We can now begin routing the green wire to the passenger side taillight and the 4-flat connector near the hitch to be put on a bracket. We need to get the wires above and around this giant underbody panel. I'm able to reach in and get this wire. If you're not able to find it, remove more 10mm fasteners to give yourself some more access. We can now continue on to the passenger side taillight with the green wire after we go ahead and loosen some more underbody panels like before, as well as wheel well trim and everything we did on the driver's side we're going to need to do again so we can get that up there. Reach in and pass the adapter over the bevel in the underbody panel so that you can reach in and retrieve it. Pull all the slack out of your green wire, being sure it does not get hung up on any sharp edges while you do this. There is some electrical wiring behind the fascia here. We want to make sure we get it over it and not get it wrapped around behind it back here. You can now route the green wire to the passenger tail light, following the same steps as before. Our wire harness is now installed and functional. We're going to go ahead and reinstall all the fasteners and trim we've removed, and then we will come back to finally mount this on a bracket. The smallest shank of your 10mm fasteners is the one that goes under here. Be sure not to use the longer ones from the underbody panel. At the bottom of the trim, there is a tab that needs to be lifted gently over this lip, and then you can push the final clips in. And reseat the electrical harness clip. And then gently push into place. Hand tighten the spring-loaded bolt, and then give it just a couple turns with the screwdriver, and it will be secure. Now line up and push in each clip one by one. You can now return the 3 fasteners from your wheel well. Return this underbody panel. Reseat the electrical harness clip. You can now return the trim to the vehicle if you removed it. We're now ready to install the wiring connector onto a bracket. This is not included with the kit, but you can pick one up at your nearest local U-Haul Hitch Center, or you can purchase one from the link in the description below. Because of the metal bracket behind this trim, I do not find this to be a good place to want to mount this, so I'm going to mount it here. Use the bracket as a template to mark out 2 holes that you can drill out with a 3/16 drill bit. The bracket will include its own hardware, but we're going to go ahead and use a rivet for a longer lasting securement. You can now put the retention strap of the dust cover over the 4-flat connector. Pass it through your bracket. You can now install your 10-amp fuse and replace the battery cover. That concludes trailer wiring for your Land Rover Discovery Sport. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to practice safe trailering, and we can't wait to see you out there. If you have any questions about the products seen in this video, or if you'd like to schedule an installation with your local U-Haul Hitch professional, please visit us online at uhaulhitches.com. You can also download the U-Haul app using the link in the description for even more ways to manage your hitch and towing needs.